Rosé?
A little. I have a lot.
We're live.
Okay, everybody. Great. I see already some chats coming in. We'd like to thank everybody for joining us on the first official JAX virtual tasting. It feels so good to be connected with you all today. And what we've seen as we've seen you subscribe to this is that many of you are regulars and you're our loyal JAX enthusiasts. And as a privately owned winery, we know that it's you spreading the word, it's you sharing our wines and talking about them that make us what we are. So that's the most important point of the day. But today is an extra special virtual tasting because we have such an extensive representation of our team. So first, I would love to introduce winemaker Kirk Venge. He sits in his office with the barrels in the background. Right there, Kirk. There he is. He's always working on the barrels, always babysitting those barrels. We've also got JAX CEO Dan Parrott. And Dan sits in Marin. He's being very S.I.P savvy here today, so he's staying away, but staying safe. We also have our hospitality manager, Kat Milano. She sits in San Francisco at the SoMa-based tasting room, and that's our major venue for tastings. And then here I am sitting in front of the glorious vineyards in Calistoga. And we're looking at, I would say, my thermometer just said 98 degrees. So Kirk, you and I are roasting up a storm, but you're in the air conditioning. So good work on your part. So first, I just want to mention we are on Facebook Live. We chose Facebook Live because we can replay it. You can see it with other friends. We can also share it with other people. But what we love is that you can't be seen. So you can be wearing bikinis, Halloween costumes. You can go topless, bottomless. Kirk, put your bottoms on. But that's the fun piece is that, you only see us. So you can today. As we drink more, who knows what falls off. But so feel free to share this great presentation with any friends of yours tomorrow or later on. Now, before we jump into why we're all here, we do have one trivia question that we're going to be asking, and it's going to be based on the content of this call today. The prize is going to be one magnum of the JAX Estate Cabernet Sauvignon from our library. So it'll be a little surprise. So make it extra exciting, listen in, and it's just a little extra incentive. But what drives me crazy with these tastings is if we're not actually drinking. And especially with the challenges that are facing us and the civil unrest and the stress, we did actually consider postponing this. But I actually believe that now is the time to savor a quiet moment. And I almost feel like drinking wine is meditative in that you can really immerse in the story that we're going to tell you. Think about what goes on in the glass, and then we can refocus in the realities of life. So we did make that call, and we thank you for joining us. So first, we're going to kick off with our lovely JAX Y3 Rosé of Pinot Noir. And this, our goal was to make this a true vin gris style. So in order to do that, we really, why don't we ask Kirk, what is it that makes a rosé lighter in color versus darker in color? How can you control that style, that really light style, or a darker hue in a rosé?
Yeah, good question. The way that it gets its color is from the skins. The varietal has, it's the longer we pick at night, we come into the winery. If we, de-stem or leave it on skins and let it saturate and soak, then we'll pick up color. But naturally, any red wine that we press out is going to have a nice, it's going to be it's a more pink or salmon than and just clear. It's the nature of the varietal, but that's kind of how it happens. And we also will age this, Kimberly, in used red wine barrels, in older Pinot Noir barrels. So it'll pick up a tiny bit of color from that neutral oak as well. So that's how it kind of happens. But it's, I love this wine. It's very fresh and refreshing. It's great savory on the palate. A lot of crispness, great with this shellfish and seafood. Hot days, perfect. Bikini out. This is for you. This is for all
in this weather. I'm gonna drink the whole darn thing down.
Yeah. This is for everybody enjoying something lakeside, poolside, or wherever you're finding yourself.
Well, it's funny. The funniest kind of wine story of my year, which is very limited. I was in New York City with our distributor just before COVID broke. And one gentleman who's been selling our wines forever was explaining and describing this wine to one of our top restaurants. And he said, this is not the extracted rosé crafted for the Hamptons, made by a millennial with a celebrity father. So, this is, bone dry, super light. It's not heavy. It's not sweet. We just wanted it palate cleansing and such. So I got a chuckle out of that one, but very.
I like how that's summarized. But yeah, it's when you do it, when you make it clean like this, it's so lovely to drink these wines, and they're and the packaging is beautiful too. You guys have done such a great job with that. So it's just pleasing all around.
Thank you, Kirk. And we only made 200 cases, so it's perfect time to be drinking it. It will not be around long. So just consider that. If you really love it, it probably will be around a couple more months, but okay, very good. So thank you on the rosé. Let's move right along and take a little sip out of the next varietal, which is the JAX Y3 Chardonnay. Okay, so just so you know, we're talking about Y3. Just to give you a little background, Y3 was the cattle branding symbol on our grandparents' cattle ranch, and it represents 3 generations of farmers. And so our Y3 wines they're just very true to varietal. We really like them to not be overly extracted, too much oak, which would effectively mask the actual fruit. And we price it at, the Y3 wines range from $18 to $28. They're just very bright. They're well made. And our intent with this Chardonnay was to make a wine that is quite a divergence from that en vogue style of the heavy-handed Chardonnays that we saw in the 90s. That tended to mask the actual fruit profile. So here, Kirk does a great job of really highlighting the flavors, framing it with a lovely acidity. And I personally love my Chardonnay, but I'm pretty picky. And it's hard to find a Chardonnay in this low $20 price point that has the interesting fruit, the finish. It doesn't overbear the food, and it just kind of hits all those bases. So beautiful job on this, Kirk. What's the key to keeping a wine more balanced and less heavy? How can you manipulate that as a winemaker?
I think, we've always had a very clear idea of what the framework of this wine should be. And, the first thing is over-deliver quality on price. So that's something that we always stand by with the Y3s. They always, for the price, you pair this with something else that you pick up at the same retail. Our wines will always prevail. I hope. That's the goal, the intent in mind. And then it was always a clear decision is where do we walk the line, because Chardonnay is a kaleidoscope of flavor and aromatic. You can make them very steely. I mean, it's sparkling wine. It's champagne. It's the base. You can have it as scorching and acid and electric feeling as that, and you can go all the way to a big round, fat and rich, sometimes clunky alcoholic wine. we find ourselves left of center where we want to remain, crisp, good acid, not be the cloying type of wine. That's too common in this category. It's too common. So that will help set us apart with this wine. So if you like freshness, if you like, salinity and citrus and all those things that can be the details of Chardonnay without getting hunkered down, then this is a great wine for you. And it's always been our vision with making the Carnero Chard.
That's great. Perfect. Very good. And you did mention it's sourced from Carnero, so it's cooler climate than up here in Calistoga. We will be talking quite a bit about the AVA of Calistoga and how that's a little bit different. But Y3 allows us to source from all over Napa, and we even go to Sonoma on some of the sources. And so it gives us the freedom to really pick the perfect AVA or sub-geographic area within a larger appellation that is suitable for that particular wine. So our Rosé is coming from the Sonoma coast, Pinot, but then this is coming from Carneros Napa. So that's something we're going to speak to quite a bit when we jump into the JAX wines. I will say that from a perspective of pairing, we recommend pairing the Chardonnay with a little bit heavier fish sort of dish than we saw with the Rosé. Rosé is very similar to a Pinot Gris, so that's going to be your lightest varietal on the white spectrum. And I know Rosé isn't necessarily white or red, but it's just simply very, very bright and light. This is a little bit heavier than that, so you might do a little bit of a more robust fish. You might pair it with a pâté or a chicken terrine. So, it can handle and withstand and pair with just a little bit of a heavier sort of food. Okay, now let's go into our real gems. Okay, so now we're moving into the JAX wines. These are our single vineyard wines. And when I say that, what you'll see with JAX wines is that they're all of that wine in that bottle comes from that very singular vineyard designate source. That means that the conditions of the soil, the conditions of the weather, they're coming from one singular situation, so that if there's a major vintage change, we can really hone in on that and really describe that exact site. So let's now focus on this lovely Calesa Vineyard Pinot Noir. And what we can do is take a look at the Petaluma Gap map. And while we do that, Kirk, let's take a little sip of this. What do you think about this amazing wine?
It captures the site so well. I love this vineyard. When we look to pick a property to source from, you have to step on that property and have a feeling and something that moves you. And as winemakers, you learn this. And growing up in Napa Valley, I was born and raised in Rutherford. So from a very early age, you can tell the difference between the soil, the cloddy soil types from the gravelly soil types. It's where you fell off your bike and skinned your knee. And you remember that these different places, and then in context over time, you figure out what mystery is in the soil and the terroir, the atmosphere, the wind, the rain, the sunshine, the exposure, whether it's north facing, south or east facing exposures. You've got, but then it's that soil and that gravel or clay or silt or combination therein. And this vineyard, as far as a Pinot Noir site, just speaks to you. When I first got out there, it was beautiful, full sun, views, south-facing views to the down to Petaluma, all the way to the Bay Area. You could see from here to this property down to Oakland, and I thought, this is a magical place. I'm up at elevation, I'm at altitude, which is going to be great when it's foggy and we're above the sun. It's windy. I stepped on the property. It was windy all of a sudden, and that's going to be great for keeping mildew down and moisture and humidity. And then just looking at the grapevines, they were beautiful, and there was quartz in the soil and volcanics and raised seabed. Everything was just really lined up, and I thought, I can't wait to get into this vineyard and see what it can produce. And I think I think this wine encapsulates. If we had a spirit of Pinot Noir, this is. I love this. This is fantastic.
Yeah.
So,
and it just lingers on the tongue. I mean, it's so, the longevity is beautiful with the minerality and acidity.
Yeah, there's a lot of fruit. It's dark fruit driven, but there's a little edge of mushroom and espresso and barrel vanillin, all of those things. Complex.
What is the optimal soil, in your opinion, for the best possible vineyard?
Well, there's no optimal soil, because you could be in granite and in the foothills, let's say, and that's an incredible soil. You can be in volcanic red clay in Atlas Peak, and that's a great soil. It's the connection of all of those in terroir and context of where you are. There's a perfect varietal for almost every scenario. Okay, like heavy clay is great for Petite Syrah and Zin dry farm. Okay, that's heavy clay, like we have up here in Calistoga. And then you go into red volcanics, and that's great for Cabernet Clone 4 or 337 or some of the newer ones even than that. So it's all in the context, but we always look for well-drained soils. Okay, if we're in a wet spot, that's not gonna bode well for our viticulture at all. We'll never get the vine to slow down and stop growing. We'll have very blasé, boring flavors. It'll be just a simple wine. And in Europe, they've been discovering this for centuries. You've got, it might look flat in Bordeaux, but on the little knoll tops where the river has eroded over millennia, those sites are the best sites. And you dig down and you get through layers of gravel, and it's just beautiful. But well-drained soils. Otherwise, you're going to have vegetative wines and grapevines that just grow and grow and grow.
Okay. So would you say that the wet roots, is it that they slow down the vine from growing, or they dilute the concentration of the fruit?
Well, there'd be no slowing down, but you'd have so much vigor.
Oh, vigor. I'm sorry. So the growth is so cool.
You'll have green seeds. The things that we look for at ripeness, Kimberly, they would probably not. I'll give everybody an example of what we look for at harvest, and that's, you need to see autumn setting in. You've got to feel the temperature change and how that feels on your skin, and how the humidity and the dryness of a cold autumn coming on. When we go to pick, I want a vine that's going to stretch out the season as long as we can go, because that's where the magic happens, is in hang time. So if we are in a wet soil, we may never ripen or ripen to a level, where the vine says, I've given all I've got. Mother Nature is blowing the bits out of me. I'm yellow or crispy, turning brown. These are the canopies, they start to fall. And we look for skin consistency. Is it thick? Is it hardening? Are we starting to see a little dimple ripe from like a golf ball look of a grape berry? I mean, it's just magic when all of this happens. How the shadows on the ground change with leaves getting smaller and falling off. I mean, there's all these different pieces and complexities to a perfect grape. And in the vineyards that we harvest, the things that we source, we will find that year in, year out. If we're in a very vigorous soil, it's going to stay green all season long, and we'll never get to a level of ripeness we'd ever be happy with. We'd have very green vegetative characters in any varietal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of the Petaluma Gap, I understand that this is the most newly minted AVA in Sonoma. And Dan, I know that you wanted to talk a little bit about the Petaluma Gap and why you really love this particular AVA specifically for Pinot Noir.
Sure. It is the newest minted, or it was as of earlier this year, the newest minted actually in the country. This is, it was all one labeled as the Sonoma Coast, but for years and years and years, they knew that this special spot had something more, and it should be its own little sub-AVA. So in 2017, they decided to make it a sub-AVA, and now we can actually write Petaluma Gap on the label. So the 2018 vintage that people purchase in this bundle today is actually labeled as Petaluma Gap. before we used to label it Sonoma Coast. What's unique about it is that it's actually between the town of Petaluma and the town of Sonoma, and it goes all the way from the Pacific Ocean down to the San Pablo Bay. And so what's unique is it's got the biggest diurnal temperature change in Sonoma. So what we get is we get the fog that comes in the evening and in the early morning, but then the sun comes out and we actually get a 40-degree swing in temperature, and we do it all over again daily and daily. So how that differs from a traditional Sonoma Coast, something that's closer to the Pacific Ocean. On the Pacific Ocean, you're going to get, the wines are going to be a little more acidic and not as ripe because they don't get the full temperature swing. In the Petaluma Gap, getting that sunshine will allow us to get a little more optimal ripeness and what I think is a longer, more subtle tannins and longer finish. So we're super excited. We've been producing this wine since 2016 vintage. So this is our third vintage, and it's a super small production. It's a limited release for us. We produce about 175 to 200 cases of this wine. And it's generally made for the tasting room, for club members, and for special dinners and events that we do across the country. So in this wine, out of all of our wines, I would say is the most versatile wine. It's what I tend to reach for the most, if by choice.
Okay, very good. And Kirk, a question from a winemaking perspective. There are some winemaking differences between making a Pinot and a Cab. For example, I noticed that it takes, 15 months typically that we'd age Pinot in the barrel. But then we'll go, I see wineries, we typically age, I'd say 18 months in the barrel with a Cab. Some people longer. Why is it? What is the difference? And why do, for example, do we age Pinot such, shorter than Cab, for example?
Mm-hmm. It comes down to the varietal carrot. The varietal is first and foremost. Now you could age, Kimberly and everybody out there, you can age a wine as little or as long as you want. There is no hard, fast rule. With premium reds and premium whites, I less maybe so on the whites, but I like to go through 2 winters. And the reason is you get this seasonal change, the expansion of wine, the swelling and contraction of the barrel. There's something about seasonality in winemaking that I think is so important. And, a lot of Pinots are bottled in 11 or 12 months. You empty the cellar and you refill it.
Yeah.
That's very traditional. These are Burgundy is, a lot of these wineries are very small places. They're under people's garage. Or they're under people's homes in their garage, what have you. But they need to get the barrels out and get new ones back in. But I think there's a beautiful thing about that 15 or 16 month period. And we use about 40% new French oak. So not nearly as high as Cab. The tannins in Pinot Noir. It comes down to the phenolics, the tannins, the things that give you astringency, aromatic color. Those, Pinot misses one of those, that Petit Syrah, Zinfandel, Malbec, and Cab. They all have another set of pigments to them that Pinot Noir does not. It's a more fragile wine. It's a more gentle wine. So let's not go too long, because oak will also eventually tire a wine out. If you've had old Spanish wines or, where they are 3 years in barrel, they sometimes have a bit of a tired feel, but that's part of the style. So I'm not going to, there's a beauty and magic in that itself. But with Pinot Noir, they can get very long, very long in the tooth, I guess, and old and overly matured the longer it goes. So 15 or 16 months seems to be, up to about 18 is about perfect for this varietal, I think. And then Cabernet, being as structured and as strong and as robust as it is, we go 22 months with that, or 23.
Okay, great.
Yeah, it's just the makeup. It's the chemical nature of the wine. But I believe 2 seasons, 2 winters is important for premium reds.
So everybody, we've released 3 vintages. We've always gotten 94 points. Wine Enthusiast, Parker, out of the gate, Kirk has ripped on this wine. And Kirk, we are so grateful and we love this wine. So great job on this one, truly. So now we're stepping into a little bit of a heavier wine from a food pairing perspective. The Chardonnay, I mentioned, that's going to pair well with little richer fish dishes. This is going to be paired with roasted chicken, a wide range of pasta dishes, duck, game, casseroles, stews like beef bourguignon. So in the red spectrum, it is a lighter wine. And especially when I talk later about what we pair the Cabernet Sauvignon with. But no, this is music to my ears. It's beautiful. And I will tell you, there's been a lot of people who have said loving this wine. Todd S.I.P loves the nose on this wine. Todd, we don't know where you are, but we thank you for that. Lots of good comments coming in, Kirk. Thank you. So well done. Very well done. Okay, so now the finale is our signature JAX Estate Cabernet Sauvignon. And Kirk has been making this wine since 2003. So Kirk is incredibly involved in the vineyard. And I will say that my brother and I were first generation winery owners. We started this winery when we were in our 20s, late 20s. I mean, Trent actually started a little bit before me, my brother. And when it was time to decide on a winemaker, we knew Kirk was, up and coming. He comes from a line of incredible winemakers. We didn't have a ton of experience in the wine world. And so we had a short list of a couple winemakers. And when it was time to make that final decision, we chose Kirk, but it felt like we were putting on a bandana and like putting a knife down on Kirk. It has more than paid off. Kirk is, he was named top 26 winemakers of the world by the Wine Enthusiast a decade ago. If you look at our scores on the JAX wines, especially, they're always in the mid 90s by the Advocate. And we chose him because he is incredibly involved in the vineyard. My father actually purchased the vineyard in Calistoga, where the Cabernet Sauvignon is. And we particularly loved him because that was really the start. And when I went onto your website, Kirk, I saw this adorable picture of you. You were playing in the vines, and it's true. You have been living here, second generation, third generation, and your passion is out here with the grapes. So, Kirk, can you tell us a little bit about our terroir up in Calistoga?
Yeah. And so also before we do that, my first memory of JAX, all right, my first memory for everybody was
good.
One of those, it was a hot day in May. It was like late May or early June. And it was one of those Silver Oak.
Yes.
House. They were doing the Alexander Valley release. And everybody, I was 26 years old, and Macaulay, a mutual friend of all of ours, Mac Watson, who was my first client in 2001, was with me. We were walking the long driveway down from Saddleback, my dad's place, to Silver Oak, and he said, "Let me introduce you to Trent Jackson," and because he had mentioned Trent a couple times, your brother, and that was the first time we shook hands, and we kept in touch, and then Trent said, "Hey, we'd like to make a move. We'd like to make a change." And at that time, I had my new winery at the Rosé Ranch, so we moved you right in. You're client number 3 in my career, and I love doing this, and I've loved the relationship and working. It was Macaulay, then Honeycutt, and then it was you guys, and I've loved this time that we've had. We've replanted Vineyard together, and it's just it's been a great thing. We've moved from facility to facility a little bit, and have always come through it shining. So it's been just wonderful.
And speaking of facility, when you built this beautiful winery that we're at, and it actually Kirk's in the office there, we make our estate Cabernet Sauvignon at Kirk's meticulous winery. So if we were to go walk into the wine room, there's not a drip of wine anywhere. It's like a COVID-19 hospital room, and I shouldn't talk like that, but it's pretty impressive. So we are blessed about that. So if we could pull up the JAX Calistoga Vineyard map. This map shows us, very good. First of all, this shows Calistoga in context to Napa Valley. And I will say that my father, as you know, he comes from a very agricultural kind of entrepreneurial family. And the Y3 Cattle Ranch was started by his father. And when he retired and wanted to become a vintner, so he was the precursor to my brother and I starting JAX, he looked at various vineyard sites around Napa Valley, and he fell in love with Calistoga. And ironically, Kirk, of course, has his own winery and vineyards in Calistoga. So Calistoga is, as you'll see in this map here, the most northern AVA in Napa Valley. And the characteristics that really make it stand apart is the disparity in temperature from daytime. If you look out here, 100 degrees, no joke. But then the evenings are chilly. I mean, it's truly the biggest temperature swing. If you came and did a wine tasting at 6 o'clock at night in July, there's a chance you're going to have to put on your sweatshirt. So, Kirk, can you tell us how that helps or does not help the actual grapes in the vineyards?
Yeah, we're in a climate, a warm climate. If you want to grow, different varietals, if you want to grow the Burgundian varietals, go to Carneros. No further north than Oak Knoll in Napa Valley as we go from south to north. South being the most cool that we have. The temperature change today would be at least probably 15 to 20 degrees if you were down in Carneros or what have you, down in the southernmost part. Up here, we enjoy this incredible sunshine. It's very hot. Ground gets hot. The vines are hot. We need to grow Bordeaux varietals here, including Sauvignon Blanc, the white, but importantly, we grow Cab Franc, Merlot, and Petit Verdot. That's what we do up here. The JAX Vineyard was a learning for me, quite a bit of an eye-opener, because in that vineyard we have both red volcanics, the same soil type, red volcanics in clay and stone. In our upper slopes of the vineyard, it's relatively flat there, but we do have a bench in the vineyard, which is a very unique piece. And it's fun to walk and look at the soil change. We've looked at that, Kimberly, many, many times.
Yeah.
Again, we've looked at this over and over again. And it's a neat soil. And then there's the transition going from, I guess, what is that, south to north, that we find ourselves in heavier clay. And these are remnants of years of the Napa River flooding and doing its thing. Sorry about that. The Napa River and what have you, flooding, and we've got, there have been oak trees and forest and everything there for the thousands of years before a vineyard would have ever put there. But our neighbor is Mount St. Helena, one of the largest volcanoes in Northern California. And its effect, its influence over this entire valley is profound. And then we have the San Pablo Bay. What we offer here for grape growing is profound. We've got, it's like 40 soil types and 10 microclimates. It's just beautiful. So we do plant the right thing on the right side. We've got Cabernet Franc, we have Petit Verdot and Cabernet Sauvignon. The Cab Franc we make a bottling of, and same with the Cabernet Sauvignon and the Block 3 Cab. That's from that benchland, that volcanic. I love the black fruit, the dark fruit that we get. What was also a nice learning piece was when I came aboard, we had 35-year-old vines, I think, Kimberly, dry farm. So you knew what the soil could do. We pulled those grandpas out and we replaced them with more common clones or current clones. But the result has been fantastic. The wines we're making today with modern viticulture, fast forward 40 years, the modern wines we're making are I think some great expressions of the site. And it's in vintage to vintage, it's been consistent. We've got great farming with Pinot management in there, and your dad's cracking the whip and making sure everything is happening.
Yeah.
I get in there and help as well. I was just visiting the vineyard 3 days ago and looking at it and talking to the grower. So it's that whole thing comes around because you have terroir, you have the farmer, you have the winery and the winemaker. And so, but I love the dark fruit expression. There's, some crushed cooking spice. There's, wonderful color in the wine every year. We try to we try to keep yields to 4 tons to the acre max. So it's beautiful. And we do a combination of cane pruning and cordon pruning for everybody out there. That's, it's kind of how you grow your grapes. There's, espalier pears and there's pear trees, so we do some mixture of different trellising types as well. But yeah, keeping, it's a beautiful site that's really in harmony. It's a wonderful place to find fruit and grow grapes.
Great. So if we could pull up the JAX Vineyard map, Kirk, I have this map broken down into the 5 blocks that we have. Now, It's fascinating. It's a limited vineyard. It's 10 acres or so. Why would we break it up into blocks?
Diversity makes consistency.
Okay. So how is that diversity from blocks?
Let's say we planted 1 clone.
Yeah.
My favorite clone, maybe it's my favorite clone from Oakville that I want to put in, I think we should really have this because it's great year in, year out in Oakville. Well, it would be short-sighted to think that that's going to do just the same from maybe a different nursery and a different planting year. Then you have to diversify your plantings. Otherwise, you're trapped because every year, and Dan will attest to this as well, when we get down to blending, we'll like clone 15 or we'll like clone 337 or clone 4. And every year it goes in a circle. Those are the 3 clones that we have of Cabernet Sauvignon at the property. You're more limited on Petit Verdot and Cabernet Franc, and we chose the best ones of those. PV3 and Cab Franc is 332. But
I know. Just for those of us who aren't like you're the brilliant winemaker, what is a clone? Like, how could you describe a quickly, easy? People talk about clones, and I know each block has a specific clone. How, in a kind of like for wine for dummies, how would you describe a clone?
It's a offspring of a parent. Oftentimes, clones begin. Okay, there's what's called, and this is going to get technical too, everybody, so pardon me, but there's Massal selections where we would go through the whole JAX Vineyard, and there are all three clones, and we'd just go take all cuttings from all parts, and we'd put them in a plot and say, this is the JAX Vineyard. This is what we get if we picked everything from JAX. Okay? That's called a Massal selection. Clones, you would say, that grapevine does the best in the heat. I really want to know what that is. And so you would propagate that, and you would give it a name, and you would say, this is the JAX clone of Cabernet, if you didn't know what it was otherwise. Now, today with DNA testing, you can go far and wide with this. You can find everything. There's a library of 4,000 varietals or something that have been cloned, DNA, categorized or strained. And so with the clonal, you want one particular thing. Okay. Old vines in vineyards, like you see in Napa Valley, Sonoma, or Lodi, those are selections. That's because Giuseppe's vineyard was so awesome that Pietro wanted that exact same thing. So they went and 100 years ago just gave each other cuttings. Okay.
Right.
And that's a Massal selection. But clone, we get more granular. We say we like exactly that vine. And this one, and let's just work on this vine right here, not the whole vineyard scape. So there are 2 theories with this.
Okay.
There's old Bordeaux vineyards like Chateau Latour, let's say, is doing this. They like particular blocks. They know they've got different things in those blocks because they were planted over and over and over again for 70 or 80 years. That vineyard block was last planted 80 years ago. Of course, they're replanting to it.
Right.
So they'll take the best cuttings from every vine they can find. Right. And they want to keep that going in their next vineyard block because that is Latour. Okay. Now, with Napa Valley, more modern viticulture here, we could do that for sure. We can do that. but we usually break it up into block by block and say, this is clone 15, this is 7, this is 337, 338. So there are two different ways of running at it. You could say I have an estate program, or we're gonna find the reserve in one of these blocks this year, or we're gonna make the Napa with the rest, the estate Napa. So
does the clone dictate the flavor? Can you say, okay, this clone gives me more of a blueberry flavor. This clone gives me more of a Bordeaux kind of dry flavor. Like, does it help drive what your goal is stylistically?
Yeah, there are clones with better color, better tannin, more flesh, more aromatics, textural things, or yield. You can also go for the money and just grow for yield. And there are clones that will give you a lot of weight year in, year out. So we, of course, are winemakers,
right?
Wine growers. First and foremost, we're wine growers. We're looking for the clone of Cab that's going to make the very best wine we can possibly make. And we don't want anything less, okay? If we were growing for production because, we were selling our fruit and we needed the best yield we could get because the most
quantity, right? It's quality, but quantity, right?
Yeah, we would go for quantity.
Yeah.
Now, the beautiful thing about being your own wine grower is there is no exception to quality. Quantity, completely different. If we were just growing grapes, taking a vacation in the day that they were sold, that'd be a totally different mindset. But our mindset is go for the top year in and year out.
Excellent.
Then we adapt the winemaking to it. We adapt the barrel program to it. So everything that we do, everything that is a touched upon part of winemaking for JAX, for Venge, for all of us under this roof is at the top, highest level.
Fantastic. Thank you. So Dan Parrott, my question to you is, you are a big driver of the winemaking along with Kirk, and you've got tons of experience in the wine world. What is our goal stylistically with our JAX Estate Cabernet Sauvignon?
Sure. I think, a traditional California style is pretty big, pretty bold, very ripe fruit. I tend to think we kind of tone it back a little bit and go towards a little bit more of a Bordeaux style without making it too much. It's still classic California Cabernet Sauvignon. Many vintages are just Cabernet Sauvignon. Some vintages have a little bit of Petit Verdot. Some vintages have a little bit of Cab Franc. All of these different grapes add flavor and texture and different components to the wine, as Kirk was talking about clones. But I think our wine is, in comparison to our neighbors, our regular estate Cabernet is, $50 retail. And most of our neighbors are $125. So I think we're a great value. We don't cut corners. We're using 65 to 70% new French oak and at an affordable price point. I like to talk, when we talk about our wine, I like to say that Calistoga, with the hottest days and coldest nights, really produces a very fruit forward, lush profile. Howell Mountain, Mount Veeder, all the mountains that are around us, great fruit. They need a lot of time in bottle. But the wines that we're making out of Calistoga are very approachable, even when we're first bottled or upon release, and they only get better in a bottle.
Very good. Okay. Just a little fun. Karen Adams, we don't know where you're from. She's asking us if we're wearing pants. Kirk, do you have your pants on? Okay, that was funny. We'll answer the questions later, but I did get a kick out of it. Okay. Good. Okay, so when we talk a little bit about food pairings on the JAX Cabernet Sauvignon, this has great tannins, great structure, so beautiful. We use 3 different coopers with it. So we recommend pairing this with steak, a really nice burger, beef ribs, slow braised beef. You could even do roast grilled lamb or even portobello mushrooms. So quite a variety of foods. It can really pair up to the heavier sort of dishes as well. So I would love to now turn the floor over, because our goal is to keep this at 60 minutes. We don't want to keep your whole nights bottled up, but we'd like to turn the floor over to Kat Milano, who is our hospitality manager. She also manages our wine club. She is 100% delight. everyone who comes to our tasting room is just, wow, who is this lady? And I also agree, just a delight to work with. So Kat hails from San Francisco in our tasting room. And Kat, can you tell us a little bit about the plan for reopening and our situation in San Francisco?
Yeah, well, I first want to just say I recognize so many names commenting on here. So it really means a lot that so many of our loyal JAX supporters are joining us today. I've had the pleasure of working with many of you for many years. So it means a lot. Thank you for your continued support. Regarding the tasting room, we plan to open on June 16th. We're really excited about that. And our outdoor patio will be open for service. So stay tuned for more updates, but we're looking forward to seeing many of your faces that we've missed a lot the last few months. So we're excited about that. And when the timing's right, of course it's not right now, but think of us for private events, corporate parties. We do everything here. So keep that in mind for the future when we're really up and running again. And just a little note, just to thank you for being here today and joining us. We want to offer you a special promotion. You receive $1 shipping on a full case of wine. You can mix and match any of the wines you love today, any of our other Y3 or JAX wines, and you'll enter the code VIRTUAL at checkout, and I'll post it in the comments below as a reminder. But we want to just thank you and make sure you get more JAX wine.
Thank you, Kat. Excellent. Okay, so everyone, you heard all the information about our tasting room. I have heard a couple questions about Napa and when our wineries opening here. And I hear it's July, August. We don't have a date for Napa Valley yet. So stay tuned, but we don't even have that information yet. So we're lucky that we're in San Francisco and we heed to different rules because of our very unique location. Now, what I would love to talk about is the trivia question. Okay, so we got deep, Kirk. We got deep, and we like to play it fun, and we're going to do additional tastings, which won't be so granular in detail. But I asked some really scary questions. Maybe you didn't have much of a buzz. The winner is going to be the person who answers this question first. Okay, everybody, brace yourselves. Okay? Because it was a hard, complex answer, but we have a pro on our hands. Okay. What is a clone? What is a clone? Oh, wow. Okay. It's a tough one.
I can see that Jane Jackson's listening in today.
Yes, she is.
Hi, Jane.
Right. That was a hard one. Should we ask?
James listening? I hope he's got a glass of wine, but he might have a gin going or something like that. It's almost that time of day, actually.
That's right. That's right. Okay. If that question is too difficult. Okay. Okay. So Karen Adams, who asked if we're wearing pants, she answered. Oh no, Todd. Sorry.
No, it's the wine bunker was the first
one. Oh,
I think this is
Clone.
I love it.
I like Todd's answer here.
So what's the right answer? Do you see the answers, Kirk? Which
let's see. It's okay. I think Karen's the closest. Although Todd could be correct too. Different context, of course.
Yeah.
But yeah. A clone is not a replica of a grape cluster, but I'll give you the answer and you can ask another question but okay, a clone is it is a mutation of a vine that looks like you want to replicate it. So if you have a mass vineyard, you have no idea what it is, but you always like the grapevine that looks like this. It's got the leaf that looks like this. It's got the cluster that's shaped like this, the morphology. That's a clone. And we would isolate that single thing. It could be, you could have two of the exact same. You might not know it. But if a DNA checks out different, then that's a specific varietal. And there are new ones all the time. So
basically it almost sounds like it's DNA, right? It's kind of like
DNA. Yeah, you can have right now, Kimberly, we have like 20 common that we plant. There are even more than that, but 20 common that we plant of Cabernet alone. So, and then you have selections. You have the C clone, or you have the whatever, the Martha's Vineyard. You have others that are cuttings and taken and cleaned up. But a clone is actually, it's given a name, and it is a singular thing. It's not a mutation, but it's just an offspring or a difference. I guess it could be a mutation from the parent, but we're always trying to find better ones, better and better and better for different reasons. But having a bouquet of these things is, part of the art.
Right. So, have we decided who the winner is?
Who wins? I think Karen's got it. Yeah,
just let me know that 3902.
It's taken from an existing. Cheryl says it's taken from existing grapevine. A clone is though a planting of a specific. It's a planting of a specific genome or a type. So let's ask a different question, Kimberly. We'll give everybody a new chance.
You asked.
I think so.
So everybody, Kirk went to UC Davis, and Dan said 3902 is correct. He says it's a mutation. Dan said mutation.
A clone is a mutation. Okay, that would be the closest, and they've got it.
Okay. Well, then we have
that would be the thing. It's a mutation that we like. It's something that we like. It held up to frost, or it's looks right, feels right. It's bad. It's a thing that we wanted to capture, replicate, and replant to.
Perfect.
All right. So 3902.
Yep, 3902 wins. Yay! We'll be shipping that out to you next Monday. So great work. Great work. So this has been a delight. It's been wonderful connecting with everybody. Kirk, thank you so much for joining us. Dan, thank you for plugging in for Marin. Kat, thank you for SoMa and checking in with us. And do we have any other questions? I feel like we've addressed them all. Does anyone have any? I think we're good. And if there's any additional questions that we did not field, we will email you those. But again, remember that Facebook Live allows us to archive this and share it with people later. So you can share this with your friends and have people over and make it kind of a turnkey hospitality experience. Most importantly, we are incredibly appreciative of all of your support. You are who make us small family-owned wineries what we are. We are not stacked in grocery stores. We don't do advertising. It's all word of mouth, and it's all passion. So we thank you for every minute, every time you open a bottle, take a sip of JAX. Thank you. And we will stay tuned for our next Facebook Live, everybody. Thank you all.
Thank you.